All right, I have with me Mayor Coral Evans. She's the mayor of Flagstaff, Arizona, and she is the Democratic candidate for the Arizona State Legislative LD6, correct?
LD6, yes.
House race.
hmm
Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to see you again. I'm excited to be here.
So tell us, why do you want to serve in the swamp? It seems like I would just stay in Flagstaff forever. It's pretty. You have real trees. The air is cleaner.
It's beautiful up here in northern Arizona without a doubt. I am running for Arizona State House simply because it is very hard to be a mayor of a small town and have your rights constantly preempted by those down at the state.
Hmm.
Being mayor, one of the things that I'm very clear about is that we know what's best for our cities and towns up here in northern Arizona, especially when it comes to local issues and local control. And over the past 10 years, our state representatives, while they complain about states' rights and having their rights stripped by the federal government, they are 100% doing that to the cities and towns in Arizona.
Tell us a little bit more about what you see as the solution to local control. Like, okay, does what's the happy medium between local communities governing themselves and the legislature sort of being the big brother or big sister in that relationship?
Right. So, what's going on right now in the state of Arizona is that the preemption bills that have been passed by the state do not represent local communities. For example, one of the major issues that we have here in Northern Arizona has to do with the short-term rental market and the short Airbnbs, for lack of a better word. We are a beautiful location up here in Northern Arizona. My district, District 6, goes all the way from the Grand Canyon to Payson, down through
Wow.
Verde Valley, Jerome, back up through Clarkdale, Cottonwood, and Sedona, and it includes Flagstaff, Arizona, everything in between. And so we have major issues when it comes to housing, housing for our workforce and housing for our first responders, our public servants, police and fire, and our nurses and teachers. And one of the things that they have done is they've created a bill called 1350, which does not allow us to address the issue of short-term rentals.
Hmm.
So, some communities, they probably work better than others, certain locations within that community, but we have been stripped of all ability to regulate. And as such, people are going around zoning. There's a reason why you have zoning in cities and towns. There's a reason why commercial is in one area. There's a reason why you have residential. When we purchase our property as private property owners, we have a certain expectation as the property we are buying. If we want to live in the middle of a hotel, or if we wanted to live in a commercial district, then we would have bought our homes in those particular districts. And so I think that that's extremely important for us to understand that. Something else too, for example, down in Tempe, the voters, 90% of the voters wanted to know where money was coming from in their local elections.
Yeah, I
They
remember that.
voted on that and they were preempted by the state. I think it's very important for us to understand that, as mayor, you cannot get much more closer to the people than I am, right? And there are certain things that happen locally that we, as local governments, have the ability to address quickly. And when we are preempted from doing such things, it makes it very hard to govern at a local level. That is why the primary reason why I jumped up and decided to run for Arizona State House. Being from Arizona, being from rural Arizona, it's very clear we do not like big government, and we don't need to be told what to do to handle our own business. And if we need Big Brother, we will give him a call.
Okay. Tell us about your platform in terms of education. Like, what is it about education that you feel isn't going properly or that needs to be worked on in our state?
Well, my mom was a school teacher. She taught kindergarten through third grade. And I myself taught school. I taught GED and adult education. When you look at the fact that we are number 48th or 49th in the country
Mm.
when it comes to education, when you see pictures of teachers having to leave their classrooms and march on our capital to ask for appropriate pay for the profession that they're in. I can't help but think about how we like to say, our leadership likes to say, we are running our state like a business. You know, being at the bottom in education is bad for business. As someone who has a MBA, as someone who runs a business, as someone who runs a business incubator, as someone who has an undergraduate in business management, having a failing public education system is bad for business. Here in the state of Arizona, we give away 18.4 billion dollars in tax incentives and tax credits. We have
To
businesses
who?
to corporations here
Oh wow.
in our state. Only 25% of corporations and businesses pay state income tax.
Hmm.
We wonder why we have school buses that break down as they take kids to school. We wonder why we do not have enough paraprofessionals, such as one on one aides, mental health counselors, nurses in schools. We wonder why our teachers can't get paid. We wonder why every 2 years there is a initiative that we all sign, then that gets certified, that has to go to court to verify, and then it gets on the ballot, trying to come up with taxes or additional funding for education. It shows a lack of leadership, is what it shows. It shows a lack of leadership at the state when every 2 years we're having to legislate funding for the education system at the ballot. Our
Hmm.
leaders are currently giving away $18.4 billion in tax incentives. Some of that money could be used on education. Here in the state of Arizona, we spend more money on the private prison system than we do our institutions of higher learning.
Hmm. All three.
All three, we spend more money on the private prison system than we do
Hmm.
on our institutions of higher learning here in the state of Arizona. You know, having a poor education system is bad for business. It is bad for us as individuals. It is not helping to make sure that we as Arizonans, whether we be preschool through 12th grade or we be adults, it is not allowing us to have what we need to go forth and be successful.
Hmm. We just have a few minutes left. I want to just touch briefly on your other two planks. What are we not doing, in your opinion, to foster small business? Because it seems like we're touted typically as one of the better states for business, but hearing what you're saying, maybe not.
Well, we're touted as being one of the better states for businesses. We need to ask what size business.
Hmm.
Most of us in rural Arizona work for a small business, and a small business is not 500 people. Okay. In rural Arizona, a small business is 10 people, 15, 5,
Hmm.
2, under 50. That is what a small business is. And a small business is the backbone of our economy in rural Arizona. When you look at
Hmm.
what happened with regards to the PPP program, in helping businesses, we know it's been very well documented that the large corporations that worked with large banks were able to secure the money and make sure that they could pay off debt. We know that that did not happen for our smaller businesses.
Hmm.
And so, what are we doing to make sure that our small businesses are here? Right now, several small businesses chose, instead of paying their what is it, their the tax, they chose to use that money to keep their employees employed or to make sure that their employees were able to feed themselves. What we need is waivers on the penalty that comes from the interest on those taxes, those quarterly taxes. What we need are some of the loans that they had to take out converted into grants.
Hmm.
Depending on how many people they were able to maintain as employees and what they are doing to reinvest in those businesses. That is what we need. We need a conscious effort to say, okay, what is it that we can do to make sure that the small businesses in rural Main Street America are still here? And that's not what we're doing. So when we talk about business in Arizona, I think that we need to really start asking people to define what they mean by business and what they mean by the size of those businesses, because we are not talking about the small mom and pop businesses that are really support rural Arizona.
Hmm. And then I do have a couple more questions. The
I'm ready.
environment.
Oh,
Because
yes.
whenever I come in your neck of the woods, I'm like, I don't want to leave. So what are we not doing right with our environment? Well, I'm living in Phoenix, so obviously I know what we're not doing right here, but in general as a state, what are we not doing right?
So let's talk about that. Down in Phoenix, I believe you experienced 60 days straight of over 115-degree weather. Is that correct?
That is correct. It
So I'm
is,
third
yeah.
generation, right? I'm third generation Arizonan. I remember when it hit 115 in Phoenix, it was rare and it was
Mm,
a big deal. Okay.
really?
Yeah, I remember when you had orange trees. I
Mm,
remember when you didn't have as much concrete. I remember when literally when it got to be 115 in Phoenix, it was a big deal. I think once in my childhood it hit like 121 and all the press stopped. Every newspaper, everybody was talking about it.
mm,
Now your average temperature in the summertime seems to be 115 degrees.
mm-hmm,
Now, I believe in science, and I believe that even if you're not a scientist, you can tell that things are different in Arizona.
mm,
You can tell that even if you do not have any type of science background. Now, if you do have a science background, you would say that there is something called climate change that is happening. Here in the city of Flagstaff, I am very proud to say that we have implemented the first ever in Arizona climate action adaptation plan in the fact that what are we going to do to minimize our impact on the environment, and how are we going to get to net neutral in our carbons by 2030, not 2050 but 2030. Okay. One of the things we also took into account that I'm very proud about is that we talk to the people that are most impacted by climate change. So down in Phoenix, what really I found very interesting is on the weekend when it was hot, I-17 was like a parking lot because everybody was coming up north to get out of the heat. My question is it must have been nice to have the funding, the money, the second home, the ability to leave
mm,
Phoenix to get out of the heat. You had a whole bunch of people down in Phoenix that did not have that ability. And it makes you wonder how they were able to afford the air conditioning bills that must have been happening while they were trying to maintain some type of decent quality of life there in Phoenix. When you look at the impacts to Northern Arizona when it comes to what is happening in Phoenix, I-17, while it might have been widened to Anthem, and I think that's great, guess what? The rest of the way is still a two-lane parking lot with
mm,
potholes. So if we're going to really address some of the additional issues when it comes to climate change, we need to address in an infrastructure that works. Also, since we know that cars are causing part of the issue, maybe we need to be looking at what light rail looks like a little bit farther out of Phoenix. Well, we also need to be addressing the fact that when you have people who are leaving the valley and coming up to Northern Arizona, that is an impact on our housing. So you have people who have second homes, right? That don't really live here, but they live here when it's hot. You have people that are now doing Airbnb, and we already talked about the preemption from the state. And
mm-hmm,
so, what you're looking at is you're looking at large amounts of housing stock being taken off the market. The workforce doesn't have a place to live, and costs are rising because of it.
mm,
When you talk about, in Winslow, they were having problems maintaining teachers because teachers can't find houses. In Sedona, they had something like 400 short-term rental beds created in a span of like 2 years.
mm.
Those are hotels that are being created that are unlicensed, unmonitored, and in the wrong areas of town because they are commercial enterprises in the middle of residential units. And then you look at the impact on water,
Mm, yeah.
what's happening with water, who has access to water. In the world of COVID, we were telling people to wash their hands for 20 seconds. There are some places in my district where they do not have running water and have to haul it. So Arizona, first and foremost, needs to acknowledge that it is now hotter all over. It hit 96 degrees in Flagstaff, Arizona this summer.
Really?
96 degrees. I live in the house that my grandfather built in 1942. I do not have air conditioning. Most of the
Mm,
old houses that we live in do not have air conditioning. It was 100 degrees in Pine this summer. So I
really?
think, yeah, I think we need to acknowledge that there is something different about our climate. Whether or not you want to acknowledge climate change or not, we need to acknowledge that our climate has changed and that we need to address that. We need to look at what it means to be able to use alternative energy sources. And I want to be clear about this. We need to acknowledge the fact that there are people, as we move to whatever this new norm is, that are going to need to have jobs. There are people who have worked in these mines and in these electrical places for generations. And so it's not enough to say that we have to go to a new energy source. We need to make sure that those people go with us and that those people have jobs and that there is space for those people in this new norm that we are trying to create to address the impacts to our environment.
Hmm. Okay, that was a lot to unpack. One last question, and I know you got to go, and I really appreciate you
I'm looking
spending
at my
time.
phone and it's ringing.
Yeah, I appreciate you spending the time with us. We have never had in any state a black female governor. New Mexico just broke that trend with two Latina governors back to back, number one and number two.
Yeah.
What do you think needs to happen so that we create more of an environment where women are able to, black women in particular, are able to get elected to statewide offices? And the reason I'm asking you this question is because our state seems to be one of the few, irrespective of conservative or liberal tilt, that gives women a chance,
Mhm.
in those leadership roles.
I think that more women need to run for office.
Mm.
I think more women need to step up and say, I'm running. One of the things I had the opportunity to talk to a group of students 2 days ago, and they wanted to know how it is that I'm running for Arizona State House of Representatives. And I talked about the fact that I was asked to run 10 years ago. And I was like, I don't have enough experience. I don't know enough. I need to learn more about the laws and those types of things. And now I sit back in awe and I watch the fact that we have so many people who have never served on the Water Commission. They've never served on a bond advisory task force. They have never done any type of community organizing and any type of community work. And guess what? They jump up and they're like, hey, I know everything. I'm running for public office. I have the solutions. So,
Hmm.
what I told that group of students is, you know what? The idea of actually knowing, I'm trying to figure out how to put this right in a dignified way. The idea of thinking that you have to have that doctorate degree, that MBA, that 4 years on a water commission, that's not what other people are doing. Okay. That's not what they're doing. The idea that you have to have some type of knowledge about what it is, that is not what I see anybody doing. Right. So if you want to run for office, you just need to get out there, pull some paperwork, and say, I'm running for office and this is my vision and this is what I believe needs to happen. I think that women, we tend to sit back and we tend to have people ask us over and over and over again. I think it's like 25 times before we decide to run. And we want to make sure that we can check that box. And I think a lot of it is because we face more obstacles, right? When it comes to gender, people are talking about your hair, your weight, your size, your lipstick, everything that has nothing to do anyway with your qualifications for the position. So the way I feel about it now is if you got an idea and you're sitting back and you're watching this clown show and you think that you could better address it, you just need to run, period, end of story. And I think if more women are running, guess what? More women are going to be getting elected.
Well, on that note, you have taken us to church. And thank you. We are actually, regardless of how your race goes, we are so proud of you here in Phoenix. So we just want you to know that the black community is very proud of you here in Phoenix.
Well, I truly appreciate my community, my Black community, and I say thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Flagstaff Mayor Coral Evans. And if you win, please come see us again.
You know I will be there. Either way, I'll be there.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.